Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cowboys and cowgirls, congressmen and congresswomen. Welcome to the show. This is Presidential Speculatainment. I'm your host, Danny Winslow. We're going to be talking about somebody who, on certain specific levels, I respect to the utmost. On other levels, I'm totally complexed and confused over. And on other levels, I'm just a bit annoyed. And yes, I'm talking about my boss, and your boss, and everybody's boss in the United States of America. Luckily, it's not one of those types of gold watch situations. He does get voted in. Or she. And in this case, we did it twice. That's right, President Obama. It's your turn. So, I think it's fitting for me to do an episode on Barack Obama. Not only because he managed to claim the title of president in 2 elections, which is the focus of much of the investigation here at Presidential Speculatainment, presidentialspeculatainment.com, but because Obama was recently podcasting around town. That's right. He was on, I think it's called the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. I think it's Maron. Anyways, you can look it up. And he did his first ever interview. In fact, the first interview a president has ever done on a podcast. So, I guess thank you, President Obama, giving this medium a little bit of a bump. He actually even made news because he said the N-word when he was being interviewed. Now, you might say, Danny, why are you saying the N-word? Why not just say the actual word? And it's like, hold on, wait, but if you say the actual word, I mean, have you ever said it before? I mean, would you say that word, And listen, I'm not going to say the actual word, not because I am a huge advocate for political correctness. I'm not. Political correctness is very boring, right? And if you know me, I am a big supporter of all things that are not boring. No, the reason that I say the N-word is because I don't have a good reason to use the actual word. It was a word that was born out of hatred and evil. If you want to use that word. Some people say that evil doesn't exist, that morality is objective, and that therefore the universe is amoral, and so there's no such thing as good and evil. That's for you to make up in your own mind. I personally think that word was born out of what I would call evil, wickedness. And I don't have a good reason to use it or to say it. I think Obama did have a good reason, actually. Now, he may have done it for political reasons. Just, I don't know. He's a tough man to nail down, what his objectives are. But it sounded like he was actually planning to say what he said. Now, that's just my take. But I guess the host, Mark, he kind of interrupted him mid thing. Obama's like, racism, something. And then Mark was like, clearly, right? But then Obama, he went straight in. into the next sentence, it really sounded to me like he was planning on saying that. But see, the problem I got with Obama is like, his official reason for doing things is always like, it's always like Mother Teresa level of generosity and kindness, right? And I really, it kills me to bring this up, but the whole, the situation in South Carolina, which is it's just this horrific tragedy. And again, we have this expression of what I would say is just an evil, wicked side of one guy who is basically blinded by racism, and it ends in an awful tragedy that nobody can explain or tell you what the moral of the story is, including myself. But see, that's exactly the problem, is that Obama, to present the eulogy at the funeral, is officially just a kind and just such a giving, generous, heartfelt act. But he did, in fact, want to give people the moral of the story, I guess. He came out, I don't know if it was the day of the tragedy or the day after. And, I really respect a president who offers his condolences, but in the same press interview, he's basically recommending bills for Congress to pass. Now, I'm the type of guy, I don't care what kind of bill that is. All right? You might say, well, it was a bill about guns, so it was extreme enough to recommend on the day of the tragedy. But personally, I think that legislative talk is for another day, right? That's a time to mourn, to grieve, not to recommend policy. But that's exactly what President Obama did. And although he's not a huge fan of capitalism, he capitalized on the tragedy in that way. And for that reason, I was skeptical when he asked to speak at the funeral, right? Give a eulogy. Because to me, it's a sad story it's a human story, but it became a political story. And, that's what Obama seems to do best, right? And another good reason to do a segment on Obama at this moment is that he's had a good week, a good past week or two, right? But let's see if we can, find the humanity in this superhero who does everything because he's, the ultimate Good Samaritan and has no political motives, right? That's the brand. So you never know what's going to happen in politics. You have to be adaptive. You have to capitalize on any surprise that happens. And that is one of Obama's strengths, one of his great talents. As I said, I have a great respect for him on certain levels. And to get a little more specific, those levels, I think, maybe were studied by Machiavelli, right? The Italian neurotic guy, right? He was basically the how to make friends and influence people guy of his time. So I think Obama's quite good at that. during the podcast, he said a certain quote, which I will relay to you now. I actually think I'm a better president, and I would be a better candidate than I ever have been. So, I think maybe it was good to have such an in-depth type format interview. I don't remember the last time Obama did a 1-hour interview with anybody, but I think that's very revealing. He likened himself to an athlete. And to me, as I said, it's taken me a few years to really try and figure him out, but Obama seems more to me like a LeBron James than a Gandhi. He's very good at what he does. He was elected to the presidency twice. And that primarily is what motivates him. Public opinion. Mark Twain once said, "It's much easier to fool people than to convince people that they're being fooled." We're not going to get too dark and depressing here, but I have compared Obama to Billy Mays in episode 3 of this podcast. So I'm not going to say that Obama is a con man, but I will go so far as to say Obama is a salesman. And what will the salesman tell you when he knocks on your front door and you open it and you're talking to him? He'll tell you anything. He will say anything. Will he play off your fears, your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses? Oh my God, that's like strategy number 2 in sales. All right, so actually, you know what? But before I get into the TPP, which just passed, and which Obama is expected to sign, let me tell you why Obama's had a good week or last couple weeks. So we've got 2 Supreme Court rulings. We've got approval of gay marriage, right? And so that's a win for Obama. Now listen, I'll tell you what the issue is. Issue is with Barack Obama via 2008 when he said, "I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. I am not in favor of gay marriage." Now he said this as a man in his 40s. So I can come to you now as a man much younger than that and tell you, you know what? I got no problem with it. I'm in favor, sure. You know? I have no need to evolve to come to that belief. I believe it now. I mean, why shouldn't they, you know? And yet, here we have a President Obama who still is not on paper supporting of it until 2012. Right? And this is the summer before the election. And he says a comment like, "Yeah, well, I'm going to go ahead and say I think it's a good idea, you know, for and listen, that's not an exact quote. But really, I mean, he's in his 50s by that time? And he has later described that process as an evolution of his position on the issue. So my point is simply that it's a different thing to say that's a win for Obama, right? Because this is a guy who, not long ago, he was opposed. And only recently evolved, a couple of years ago. All right? So I would not call that, like, I don't know. people might spin that and say, oh yes, Obama's vision is becoming complete, right? His vision since when, right? 2 years ago. Or 3, right? Now, the other ruling can be owned much more by Obama, right? It's the Obamacare ruling saying that subsidies can be still given out in states that did not set up an exchange. Okay, now that I will concede is a win for Obama, right? His name is on the thing. But you know what? It's more of an issue for later to get into, right? We would have to have a whole conversation about Social Security and all that. So if you're wondering what my bias is on that, let me just say this. You want to know how benefits work? So Obamacare gives benefits to certain people, and it makes other people pay more. So let's call that a liability to pay extra. So I'm gonna just wildly speculate here that if you're somebody who is receiving a benefit, you're gonna be pro. You're gonna support that program. On the other hand, if you're somebody who gets docked with an extra bill, right, an extra liability, well, you're going to oppose that. You're not going to be a fan of that. So if you're asking about me, where I stand on it, rather than dodge the question, why don't I just give you a simple answer? I'm for it if I'm getting a benefit, and I'm against it if I'm being billed with a liability. All right? So there you have it. It just depends on my insurance bill, right? And what type of income class that I fall under. And hey, it's rude to ask somebody how much money they make, is it not? So in any case, nonetheless, Obama's getting credit for, I guess, both of these things. And so, like I said, he's having a good little time. I just wanted to point out that the real story here is his support, our president, that is, for this TPP bill that just slithered its way through Congress as people were just staring at the Vanity Fair cover trying to determine, does Caitlyn Jenner have a bulge? And so, what's the real story here, people? I mean, is it in the interest of the lawmaking business sometimes for the public to be unaware of the pertinent laws that are being considered? Perhaps distracted, perhaps looking away from a certain law that's been in the works for years? And listen, this is no secret, because the president has been very upfront that he's totally pro TPP. That would be the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Very, very in favor of it. And in fact, he puts his own spin on it, saying that, well, by golly, it's just the best fix around for the American family. It's a bill. It's a family bill. You know, like a family restaurant, family owned bill, that type of thing. Well, I'm really not going to break down the bill for you right here, other than to say that it's a business bill. It's like for corporations. It concerns the activities of the largest and most powerful corporations on the planet. And there's not much in there about sitting on your front porch, having a glass of cider. More of an uncommon activity than stock buybacks. But in any case, it's not a family affair. It's all business. And so, in fact, it's a little too depressing for me to do anything except recommend that you go to, Wikipedia or Google.com and just look this up for yourself. Go see what's in it, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But that was Obama's real win in recent times. This other stuff, I thought it was notable that Obama gets a bunch of headlines for the Supreme Court decisions, but his real love child is this new international body of law, you might even say, that has now been passed by Congress, that Obama has just been begging to sign. And so that's the thing. It's like, what does the Obamacare ruling affect? Let's just say you're a rich Republican. Well, it doesn't even affect, it might affect you down the line. It just affects somebody in another neighborhood than you live in who's now going to, afford their bill, right? Hospital bill. It's like, what does the gay marriage thing affect? Well, again, it's it's a neighbor down the street. It's not me. Well, what does the TPP affect? Just every single citizen of this nation, in addition to a bunch of other nations. And it's not a headline news story. It's on the third or fourth line. But here, at Presidential Speculatainment, it's on the top line, folks. And I just wanted to say that the other stuff, as we try and figure this complex, intriguing man out during his, I guess it's his 7th year in office. Right? And we're still, coming up short. But I think we are finding some of the humanity that's in there. And we have learned, we're wise enough at this point to say, oh, okay, Obama, you're just doing a little political soft shoe. Look over there and say, oh, okay, Obama's just trying to get those public approval ratings to tick back up. And then look over here and say, oh my God, Obama, he loved it when that bill got passed. He almost fainted. He almost had like a, one of those chills that's almost so good that it's like an orgasm all over your body. It's like, oh man, that's what you really wanted this whole time. So as far as what really drives the man, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see till he's out of office, right, folks? George W. Bush, we got to find out. He paints, right? He's a painter. He's like Van Gogh, right? But he won't be famous till 100 years later. But that's what he's been doing, right? He's been painting since he got out of office. So the ultimate test for Barry will come after his presidency. We'll see. If he becomes a multimillionaire, or I think he already is, but if he becomes a billionaire, or if he, becomes a missionary in Africa or South America or, wherever, or if he becomes, a song and dance man, or if he was never even real, right? He was just conjured up from the mists of Hawaii, and then he just vanishes into a poof, kind of like Nixon did on the helicopter. except it would be way more supernatural. So we will continue to consider any of these scenarios right here on the Presidential Speculatainment Podcast. Please visit the website, presidentialspeculatainment.com. And please give me a rating on iTunes, or just write a very, very short review. And maybe, just maybe, we can get President Obama on this podcast with your help. So with that, I will see you at the rodeo.